Hey, welcome to The Explainer. For this one, we're putting together a beginner's guide to Carissa Orlando, a breakout author who is, and I mean this, completely redefining the haunted house story. And let's just jump right in with the very first line from her debut novel, The September House. This single sentence, right here, it tells you everything. It perfectly captures this unsettling, darkly funny, and, well, weirdly practical world she builds. It's horror for sure, but it feels grounded in this very real, very strange kind of resilience. So who is the author behind this unique blend of horror and humor? I mean, what kind of mind comes up with a character who reacts to bleeding walls with just a sigh and maybe a mop bucket? Well, get this. Carissa Orlando is basically leading this fascinating double life. By day, she's a clinical psychologist with a doctorate, and she focuses on helping kids with their mental health care. But by night, she's a lifelong, die-hard horror fan who actually studied creative writing way before she ever went into psychology. You know, as she said herself, it was really only a matter of time before these two big passions of hers, a deep professional understanding of the human mind and a genuine love for all things spooky, collided to create something totally new in the horror genre. And this is where it gets really interesting. Her day job isn't just a fun fact for her bio, it's her creative superpower. It is the very engine driving her stories. This quote right here, this is pretty much the key to everything. Her training as a psychologist gives her this unique lens. It lets her create characters whose choices that might seem, completely nuts to the rest of us, like staying in a house that's actively trying to kill you, are actually completely logical once you get inside that character's head and understand what they've already been through. And her whole approach to fear is just fascinating. She's talked about how the things that truly terrify her aren't monsters or ghosts, but everyday anxieties. So her goal is to take that internal horror, that feeling of an anxiety disorder, and turn it into an external, supernatural threat that everyone can feel. All right, so how does all of this actually come together in a book? Let's talk about her phenomenal debut, The September House. And don't you worry, we're keeping this completely spoiler-free. So the setup, it starts off like a classic haunted house story, right? But with this fantastic twist. A couple buys their dream home, finds out it's a total nightmare, but the haunting is seasonal. It only gets really, really bad in September. The whole story really kicks off when, after 4 years of this, the husband, Hal, just vanishes. And then their estranged daughter shows up looking for him, completely unaware of the house's quirks. But the real genius of this book, I think, is the main character, Margaret. This quote just says it all. Instead of a screaming victim running for the hills, we get a woman who is just completely and hilariously unimpressed by all the paranormal chaos. Her whole attitude just shatters every horror trope you can think of. And that's the thing about Margaret. Her survival strategy isn't about fighting ghosts with, salt circles and spells. It's all about coping. And her methods? They're straight out of a psychology playbook. She uses reframing, calling these violent spirits pranksters to make them seem less powerful. She practices radical acceptance by treating bleeding walls like a stain on the carpet. The book makes this powerful point that her ability to put up with supernatural horror comes from a lifetime of putting up with other, more human horrors. So when you get right down to it, The September House is just way, way more than a simple ghost story. It's this incredible genre-bending mix that's one part terrifying haunted house, one part domestic thriller about a missing husband, and one part incredibly sharp, dark comedy. All right, for our last section, let's take a quick peek behind the curtain at the journey of bringing this super unique story into the world, because it's a really fascinating look at how publishing actually works. So, can you believe this whole novel started from just one funny idea back in late 2019? The idea was basically, what if a person lived in the scariest house imaginable and was just fine with it? She knocked out the first draft right before COVID hit, landed her book deal toward the end of 2021, and the book finally hit shelves in September 2023. That's a long wait. And Orlando has even talked about how wild that wait felt, not just for her, but for everybody she knew. This quote just captures it perfectly. That feeling of telling your excited friends you have a book deal and then having to explain they can't actually read it for 2 more years. So, all of this leaves me with a final thought, and maybe it'll get you thinking too. Carissa Orlando's work is such a powerful example of how a unique professional background can just completely revolutionize a genre. And it makes you wonder,
What other incredible, untold stories are just waiting out there in the minds of people from totally different fields? What kind of terrors could an architect or a chef or an accountant unleash on the page? It's a fascinating question.